the summer of 1957, outside Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, a young man with Down syndrome waited patiently in a crowd of screaming fans. While others pushed and shoved for a glimpse of Marilyn Monroe, 24-year-old Tommy Russo stood quietly, clutching a hand-drawn picture and wearing his best Sunday clothes. What happened when Marilyn noticed him would begin a 5-year friendship that she would treasure more than any Hollywood relationship and keep completely secret from the world. Tommy Russo lived with his parents in a small apartment in East Hollywood, just 10 blocks from the famous theater district. In 1957, society had little understanding or acceptance of people with intellectual disabilities. Most were hidden away, institutionalized, or treated as objects of pity rather than human beings capable of friendship, love, and meaningful connections. But Tommy was different. Despite the limitations placed on him by society, he had developed an intense love for movies, particularly Marilyn Monroe's films. His bedroom walls were covered with movie posters, and he could recite entire scenes from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and The 7-Year Itch from memory. His mother, Rosa Russo, had been reluctant to bring Tommy to the movie premiere that night. She worried about how people would react to him, how they might stare or make cruel comments. But Tommy had been asking for months to see Marilyn Monroe in person, and Rosa finally couldn't resist his gentle persistence. "Mama, I just want to give her my picture," Tommy had said, showing Rosa the portrait he'd spent weeks drawing with colored pencils. It wasn't perfect, the proportions were off, and the colors bled outside the lines, but it was filled with care and admiration. The premiere of The Prince and the Showgirl was typical Hollywood glamour. Hundreds of fans lined the red carpet, photographers flashed constantly, and security guards worked to keep the crowd controlled. Marilyn arrived in a stunning white gown, waving to the crowd as she made her way toward the theater entrance. That's when she saw him. While everyone else was calling her name and reaching out with photos to sign, Tommy stood perfectly still, holding his drawing close to his chest, smiling with pure joy just from seeing her. There was something about his stillness, his genuine happiness, that caught Marilyn's attention in a way that all the screaming and chaos couldn't. Marilyn stopped walking. Her publicist tried to guide her toward the theater entrance, but she held up a hand and walked directly toward Tommy. "Hello there," Marilyn said softly, kneeling down slightly to meet Tommy's eyes. "What's your name?" Tommy's face lit up with the biggest smile Rosa had ever seen on her son. "I'm Tommy Russo, Miss Monroe. I made this for you." He held out his drawing with shaking hands. Marilyn took it gently and studied it carefully. It was a picture of her in the famous subway grate scene from The 7-Year Itch, but drawn with the innocent perspective of someone who saw only beauty and joy in the image, not sexuality or scandal. "Tommy, this is the most beautiful picture anyone has ever given me," Marilyn said, and she meant it. "You're very talented." The crowd around them had gone quiet, watching this unexpected interaction. Some people were whispering, pointing at Tommy, making the kind of remarks that Rosa had feared. But Marilyn seemed completely oblivious to them, focused entirely on this young man who had given her such a sincere gift. "Would you like to take a picture together?" Marilyn asked. Tommy nodded enthusiastically. Rosa stepped forward nervously, introducing herself and explaining that she was Tommy's mother. Marilyn immediately included Rosa in the conversation, asking about Tommy's interests and treating him not as a curiosity, but as a person worth knowing. The photographer captured the moment, Marilyn Monroe and Tommy Russo, both smiling genuinely, holding his artwork between them. But more importantly, something had connected between them that would last far beyond that single photograph. Before leaving that night, Marilyn did something that surprised everyone present. She took out a small notepad and wrote down Tommy's address, which Rosa had hesitantly provided when Marilyn asked. "Tommy," Marilyn said, "would it be okay if I wrote you a letter sometime? I'd love to hear more about your artwork." 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at the Russo household that would change Tommy's life forever. "Dear Tommy," it began, written in Marilyn's own handwriting, "I wanted to thank you again for the beautiful picture you drew for me. I've hung it in my dressing room, and it makes me smile every time I see it. I was wondering if you might like to be pen pals. I'd love to hear about what you're working on and what movies you've been watching. Your friend, Marilyn." Rosa read the letter to Tommy 3 times before he fully believed it was real. Then he immediately sat down to dictate a response, which Rosa helped him write and mail. This began a correspondence that would continue for 5 years, until Marilyn's death in 1962. But it was much more than just letters. What developed between Marilyn Monroe and Tommy Russo was a genuine friendship that provided both of them with something they desperately needed. For Tommy, Marilyn represented acceptance and recognition in a world that often ignored or dismissed him. She treated him as an equal, asking his opinions about movies, sharing stories about her work, and never talking down to him or treating him differently because of his disability. For Marilyn, Tommy offered something even more valuable: unconditional friendship from someone who saw her not as a sex symbol or movie star, but simply as a person worth caring about. Their letters revealed a side of Marilyn that the public never saw. She wrote to Tommy about her fears, her hopes, and her struggles with the pressure of fame. In return, Tommy shared his daily life, his artwork, and his unwavering optimism despite the challenges he faced. Dear Marilyn, one of Tommy's letters read, "Mama took me to see Some Like It Hot 3 times. You were so funny. I laughed so hard that Mama had to tell me to quiet down. I drew you a picture of the scene with the cake. I hope you like it. Do you really like making movies, or do you just do it for work? Love, Tommy." Marilyn's response, written during one of her most difficult periods with Arthur Miller, was remarkably honest. "Dear Tommy, I'm so glad you enjoyed the movie. Sometimes making movies is hard work, and sometimes the people in Hollywood can be mean or fake. But when I know that friends like you are watching and enjoying what I do, it makes it all worthwhile. You help me remember why I love acting. Thank you for that." What made their friendship even more remarkable was that Marilyn chose to keep it completely private. In an era when celebrities often publicized their charitable work or associations with causes, Marilyn never told a reporter, publicist, or biographer about Tommy. She didn't use their friendship to enhance her public image or demonstrate her compassion. She simply valued it as what it was, a real friendship. This secrecy was partially protective. Marilyn understood the cruel attitudes of the 1950s toward people with intellectual disabilities. She knew that publicizing her friendship with Tommy might subject him to ridicule or exploitation. But it was also personal. Their correspondence and occasional meetings were among the few genuine relationships in Marilyn's life that weren't complicated by fame, business, or public scrutiny. The friendship faced its first major test in 1958, when Marilyn was in New York studying at the Actors Studio. Tommy had been writing regularly, but Marilyn's responses had become less frequent due to her intensive work with Lee Strasberg and her troubled marriage to Arthur Miller. Rosa Russo noticed that Tommy was becoming depressed, constantly checking the mailbox and asking when Marilyn's next letter would arrive. She was torn between protecting her son's feelings and maintaining hope for the friendship that had become so important to him. Then, on Tommy's 25th birthday, something extraordinary happened. A delivery truck pulled up to the Russo house, carrying a large package with a return address from New York. Inside was a hand-knitted scarf with a note. "Dear Tommy, I made this scarf for you myself during my acting classes. When it gets cold, I want you to think of our friendship and know that someone in New York is thinking about you. Happy birthday to my dear friend. Love, Marilyn." But the package contained something even more meaningful. Along with the scarf was a small tape recorder and a recorded message from Marilyn herself. "Hi, Tommy," her familiar voice said through the small speaker. "I'm sorry I haven't written as much lately. I've been very busy with my acting studies, but I think about you all the time. I wanted you to hear my voice and know that our friendship means the world to me. I hope you like the scarf I made. I'm not very good at knitting, but I put a lot of love into every stitch. Keep being the wonderful, kind person you are, Tommy. The world needs more people like you." Tommy played that recording dozens of times, and Rosa often found him sitting quietly, just listening to Marilyn's voice and smiling. Their friendship continued to evolve in unexpected ways. When Marilyn returned to Los Angeles in 1960, she arranged to meet Tommy and Rosa for a very private lunch at a small restaurant in East Hollywood, far from the usual celebrity haunts. She arrived dressed simply, wearing sunglasses and a headscarf, looking more like a regular person than the movie star. The lunch lasted 3 hours. They talked about movies, Tommy's artwork, Marilyn's work, and their shared love of classical music, which Tommy had developed through his participation in a community center program. Marilyn was genuinely impressed by Tommy's knowledge and passion for composers like Chopin and Beethoven. Tommy knows more about music than most people in Hollywood, Marilyn later wrote in her private diary. His enthusiasm for beautiful things reminds me why art and music and movies matter. He sees the world with such pure appreciation. That meeting led to several other secret get-togethers over the next 2 years. Marilyn would occasionally visit Tommy and Rosa at their apartment, always arriving quietly and without fanfare. She would look at Tommy's newest artwork, listen to his record collection, and sometimes bring small gifts, books about art, classical music albums, or art supplies. These visits meant everything to Tommy, but they also provided Marilyn with a refuge from the increasing pressures of her career and personal life. At the Russo apartment, she wasn't Marilyn Monroe, the troubled sex symbol. She was just a friend who appreciated Tommy's artwork and Rosa's homemade Italian food. "When I'm with Tommy, I feel like myself again," Marilyn confided to her therapist, Dr. Ralph Greenson, though she never revealed Tommy's identity or the specific nature of their friendship. "He doesn't want anything from me except friendship. He doesn't judge me or try to change me. He just accepts me as I am." The friendship also had a profound impact on Tommy's confidence and social development. Rosa noticed that her son became more outgoing, more willing to engage with other people, and more confident in expressing his opinions and interests. Marilyn's acceptance and encouragement had shown him that he was worthy of friendship and respect. Tommy began volunteering at a local community center, helping with art programs for other adults with disabilities. He would often talk about his friend Marilyn and how she had taught him that everyone deserved to have their artwork appreciated and their voices heard. The last letter Tommy received from Marilyn arrived just 3 weeks before her death in August 1962. In it, she thanked him for a recent drawing he had sent, a portrait of her as Rosalind in The Misfits, and shared some of her hopes for the future. "Dear Tommy, your latest drawing is absolutely beautiful. You've captured something in Rosalind that I tried to bring to the character, a kind of wounded hope. Thank you for seeing that and for sharing your gift with me. I've been thinking a lot lately about what really matters in life, and I keep coming back to the same answer: genuine connections with people who care about each other. Our friendship has been one of the most important relationships in my life, and I want you to know that you have made me a better person. Love always, Marilyn." When news of Marilyn's death reached the Russo household on August 5, 1962, Rosa faced the heartbreaking task of explaining to Tommy that his friend was gone. Tommy's reaction was immediate and profound grief, but also something that surprised Rosa. "She's not really gone, Mama," Tommy said through his tears. "She taught me that when someone loves you and believes in you, that love stays with you forever. Marilyn will always be my friend." Rosa found this wisdom remarkable coming from her son, and she realized that Marilyn's friendship had given Tommy something more valuable than she had initially understood. It had taught him about the permanent nature of love and the way meaningful relationships continue to influence us even after they end. In the weeks following Marilyn's death, Rosa discovered the full extent of what their friendship had meant. Among Tommy's belongings were 17 letters from Marilyn, the handmade scarf, dozens of photographs she had sent, and a small notebook where Tommy had carefully copied his favorite quotes from her letters. One quote, which Tommy had written in his best handwriting and decorated with small drawings, read, "Tommy, never let anyone make you feel like you're not important. You have a beautiful heart and a wonderful mind, and the world is better because you're in it." Rosa realized that Marilyn Monroe had given her son something that no amount of money or therapy could provide: the unshakable belief that he was valuable exactly as he was. The story of Marilyn and Tommy's friendship remained private for over 20 years. Rosa, respecting both her son's privacy and Marilyn's memory, never spoke to reporters or biographers about the relationship. Tommy continued to live quietly, working at the community center and creating artwork, always keeping Marilyn's memory alive through his own acts of kindness toward others. In 1984, Tommy was diagnosed with early-onset dementia, a condition that often affects adults with Down syndrome. As his memory began to fade, Rosa made the decision to finally share the story of his friendship with Marilyn Monroe. She felt it was important for the world to know about this side of both her son and the famous actress. Rosa donated Tommy's letters from Marilyn to the Hollywood History Museum, along with photographs and recordings from their friendship. The exhibit, titled Friendship Beyond Fame, The Untold Story of Marilyn Monroe and Tommy Russo, opened in 1987 and drew visitors from around the world. The exhibit revealed not just the scope of their friendship, but the profound impact it had on both their lives. Visitors could read Marilyn's handwritten letters, see Tommy's artwork, and understand how two very different people had found genuine connection across the barriers of fame, disability, and social prejudice. Child psychologist Dr. Margaret Chin, who studied the correspondence for a research project on friendships involving people with intellectual disabilities, noted the relationship's significance. What Marilyn Monroe and Tommy Russo created together was revolutionary for its time. In the 1950s and early 1960s, people with intellectual disabilities were largely invisible in society. Marilyn's friendship with Tommy, conducted with such respect and genuine affection, demonstrated a level of inclusion and acceptance that was decades ahead of its time. The friendship also revealed an aspect of Marilyn's character that complicated the popular narrative of her as a tragic, self-absorbed figure. Her consistent kindness toward Tommy, her protection of his privacy, and her genuine investment in their relationship showed a capacity for selfless love that existed alongside her well-documented struggles. Tommy Russo passed away in 1991 at age 58. At his funeral, Rosa read aloud from one of Marilyn's last letters to him. "Tommy, you have taught me that the most important thing any of us can do is to see the goodness in others and reflect it back to them. Thank you for seeing goodness in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself." Today, the story of Marilyn Monroe and Tommy Russo is used in disability advocacy programs and friendship curricula in schools around the world. Their correspondence is studied by researchers interested in inclusive relationships and the social history of the 1950s and 1960s. But perhaps the most lasting impact of their friendship is the simple truth it demonstrated, that genuine human connection transcends all the barriers that society creates. Fame, disability, social expectations, and prejudice could not prevent two people from finding real friendship based on mutual respect, shared interests, and authentic care for each other. The community center where Tommy volunteered for over 30 years has established the Tommy Russo Memorial Art Program, which provides art education and exhibition opportunities for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. On the wall of the main studio hangs a framed quote from one of Marilyn's letters. "Art is about showing the world what you see and feel. Everyone's vision matters." Marilyn Monroe died believing she had failed at most of the things that mattered to her: marriage, motherhood, serious acting, genuine relationships. She never knew that her 5-year friendship with Tommy Russo would become one of her most significant legacies, demonstrating that love, acceptance, and human dignity are more powerful than fame, prejudice, or social barriers. In a world that often values people based on their productivity, their conformity, or their usefulness, the friendship between Marilyn Monroe and Tommy Russo reminds us that everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and loved for exactly who they are.